Good evening, friends. I'm just doing a little impromptu video here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this particular one, but it's a problem that we all suffer from, and especially since the economic crisis started in 2008. And the biggest thing that happened in the economic crisis, of course, is that the nature of lending had changed dramatically. The banks claimed to have taken a loss. Well, they did take a loss in income because lots of people have since then been unemployed. So this has caused a precipitous drop in real estate prices, and even though now 4 years later, many of us are back to work, and we may be employed, but lots of us had have lost property or our credit rating or the decent job that we had, um, and we've been unable to replace home ownership that we had in the past. And the economic trends of the future kind of, I would say, discourage real estate uh, as an investment for the individual in the future because of the likelihood of default. Now, if you have a situation where you have a good job, a decent income, and that you can rely upon for the entire length of your mortgage, um, you know you you're in a difficult position to try to gain financing from a bank these days, even though they're sitting on billions of dollars of TARP money still, and now they're getting fed, freaking 40 billion a month with QE 3 or 4 or whatever the fuck you're gonna call it. They've come out and said that they're gonna keep interest rates at 0% for the next 3 years. Um, yeah, we can safely say that real estate prices are not going to be keeping up with inflation in most markets. The average real estate price is going to still continue to go down. So that's why I say that for an individual to own real estate with a note on it that the bank owns is not a very safe strategy these days. Like I said, unless you got a good paying job that you can go out and qualify for that loan and then pay off that loan with depreciating Federal Reserve notes. But for the average person, the homeless person, the unemployed person, the person that has a damaged credit rating and is unable to get financing, even though they may own a property free and clear, because they may not have some kind of job, or their credit score is a little off or whatever. um, they may not be able to get financing like they were 4 years ago. So this has created a whole problem in our whole economy, because the whole economy is built on this real estate foundation, that the American worker is going to be able to go out and be able to buy this piece of real estate, and that this real estate is going to increase in value, and that this is going to be a base, and it has been for decades. I mean, ever since World War II, when the baby boomer, well, when the Great Generation came back to America and the building boom began. It's always been the case that there's always been demand for housing, and for people to go out and get their own homes and not consider community housing or co-housing or multi-generational housing, or any types of different housing um, options that are out there. Um, so to counteract what the banks have done in freezing the credit markets, the the new, I mean, people have been contacting me a lot here in the last month, and I've had my ad or a ad up on intentional communities for going now on almost 3 years now. So there are lots of people out there looking at this. They're looking at intentional communities, and they would like to go out and form their own community, or there's lots of them out there that are looking to acquire more property to expand their operation. However, they're unable to get this bank financing because the banksters will not give them the freaking money. And like I said, it has nothing to do with your credit worthiness anymore. The banks are sitting on the money, and they only are giving it to the people and the projects that they have a vested interest in. Um, so to get around this, we have to create our own money. Since the Federal Reserve is able to create money for the federal government, and which is the whole creation, or one of the sources of this problem, is that the United States government for years has been subsidizing the real estate market with these government-backed loans, and they've totally distorted the real estate market. And now that most people live below the poverty line, and this is becoming the new norm in America, the American dream is just a nightmare for most Americans. So we're looking for different ways to go about fixing that problem. And one of the people that I've been working with in my intentional community, Dan, I was speaking to him, and he was talking about creating a limited liability company to go and be the actual group or the organization that would be created to to be the trust or whatever, the organization for creating a intentional community. And this would be a interesting way that buyers and sellers could create a company, a limited liability company, to facilitate the financing of the real estate that a intentional community may need. Now, like I said, here in the future, we're looking at real estate prices are probably actually going to go down. So, if in a traditional loan, the seller is taking on a great risk in saying that, okay, this property is worth $200,000 today, and if he doesn't get that $200,000, he gets it admirized over 20 years, that his sale price is, the buying power of that is going to be diminished considerably, especially as inflation keeps accelerating, and especially so the when the seller sells his property in a typical real estate transaction, he loses all future appreciation typically, unless that's written into the real estate contract or the financing, that they're figuring out. Uh, and these things could all be included in the operating agreement of the limited liability company, and or the real estate contract that is used to acquire this property. But this is a wonderful way, because the limited liability company is wonderful in that it can be organized in any state in the United States these days, and in lots of states it's very inexpensive. When I formed a limited liability company, my first one in New Mexico, I think the filing fees were only like $40 or something like that. And I know California, where I live now, it's one of the more expensive ones, but it's still considerably less than forming a S corporation. So, and plus there's organizational advantages to a limited liability company, especially when it comes to taxation, because the limited liability company is a pass-through entity, meaning that if the limited liability company makes a profit, it itself does not incur any tax liability, and does not pay any per se income taxes, because at the end of the year they 1099, or there's a I forget the exact document that's supposed to be filed, but each member is issued a income statement that of the profits made in the limited liability company, and it can be in the operating agreement that we will never disperse a profit more than whatever the minimum filing requirement is for the IRS. And and we can fudge the books and make it look like we're not making a profit, when actually a member, let's say they were a property member, they're actually accumulating some appreciation for their in their property. So they're protecting themselves from the inflation monster. Another thing is because land is so valuable, and most of us, we buy land and invest in land and hold land because they're not making land anymore. It's a sound investment, and we're just looking to get involved, or we're looking at liquidating one investment for liquidity's sake, to invest in something different. So not necessarily that your holding is bad. You just need the cash. And the only place that you can get it right now, because the bank won't lend it, is that you have to sell. So maybe the options that a limited liability company might offer you in retaining actual ownership of it, and maybe renting it, or leasing it to the limited liability company, or doing some kind of real estate contract that is negotiated between the company and the owner, or whatever kind of situation would work better for the owner. Because that's what this whole situation, that's what this whole deal is about. I mean, most people might say, oh, it's a scam or whatever, but corporations, they're all created to do a purpose or whatever, whether it's a nonprofit corporation or like an NGO, a non-governmental organization that's formed. These organizations, they all work on operating agreements. They have strict hierarchies, and they're generally able to get things done. And I think that us, as wanting to form communities, and also want to retain as much autonomy and control as possible over the transaction, I think that this concept, this limited liability company forming concept, might be really helpful for forming a intentional community.